All right, page 166, 167, pathogens. Before we read, go ahead and start by copying your vocabulary definitions for pathogen, infectious disease, and non-infectious disease. I'll read them one time, but you can just look right here at the screen. Pathogen is an organism or particle that causes disease. An infectious disease is a contagious disease caused by pathogens. A non-infectious disease is a disease that is not caused by pathogens and is not contagious. So as I read this first paragraph, I want you to be able to tell me, number one, what is a pathogen? And number two, what is the difference between infectious and non-infectious disease? Here we go. Different diseases have different causes. Some are a result of pathogens, which are organisms or particles that lead to disease. Pathogens are often microorganisms that can only be seen with a microscope. A disease that originates from a pathogen is called an infectious disease. These diseases are usually considered contagious because they can spread from one individual to another. On the other hand, a non-infectious disease is not caused by pathogens and cannot be spread from person to person. So going back, what is a pathogen? You should have just written the definition. So it is something that causes disease, a microorganism or a particle, sometimes something bigger. These are things that cause disease. What is the difference between an infectious disease and a non-infectious disease? So if a disease is infectious, if it's caused by a pathogen, then those pathogens can usually be spread, and so it's contagious. A non-infectious disease, it does not start from pathogens, so it's not contagious. So what type of disease is COVID-19? It is contagious. It is caused by a pathogen. It is an infectious disease. As I read the second paragraph, we're going to talk about four main groups of pathogens. So I want you to be able to name them at the end of the chapter, and I'm also going to ask you what type of pathogen COVID-19 is caused by. See if you know. Here we go. Pathogens are classified into groups. Four common groups include bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protists. Now, I think you guys already know, we've already talked about viruses and fungi. Protists are like little bitty one-celled things that live in water. They're amoebas and paramecium and all kinds of cool things. If we come back to school and look at pond water, we'll see some of these. Bacteria are unicellular and cause a wide variety of diseases, like the ones we saw yesterday in our mouth. Leprosy and conjunctivitis, or pink eye, are two examples of bacterial infections. Now, viruses are tiny particles, much smaller than bacteria. They are responsible for hundreds of kinds of colds and flu, as well as other diseases. Do you remember the video we watched about the multiplication of viruses in that guy's head? Fungi, which include molds and yeasts, like to grow in, do you remember the two conditions? Warm and moist. Athlete's foot is a common fungal disease because think about it, your feet get sweaty and they're inside those socks, warm and moist. Protists are also unicellular organisms. Many protists that cause disease live in unpurified water, and ingesting them can lead to serious illness. Okay, I'm going to slide this up a little bit. Let's see what these pictures are. This one right here, this is an influenza virus particle. These down here, staph infections come from this, the Staphylococcus aureus bacteria. Quick fact, chickenpox. Chickenpox is a common childhood disease. It's characterized by pox, or small sores on the body. The infectious pathogen is the varicella zoster virus. A vaccine against chickenpox was developed in 1974, and it can prevent this disease. It's recommended that young children receive this vaccine. Cases of chickenpox range from mild to severe. And I bet that almost all of you, if not every one of you, has had this vaccine. And so you have not had to have chickenpox. I did. But I was a baby, so I don't remember. All right, next page. Okay, as I read this first paragraph on the top of page 169, I want you to pay attention to how do infectious diseases spread? How do we spread them from person to person? Okay, here we go. Infectious diseases are contagious because the pathogens that cause them. These organisms can be spread in a number of ways, so pay attention. Pathogens commonly pass from one person to another, so person to person, that's one main way. This can happen directly, like a handshake, or it can happen indirectly when someone coughs or sneezes. Some pathogens live naturally in soil, food, or water, so that's the second way, infected soil, food, or water. Botulism or food poisoning is caused by bacteria that live in the soil. If people eat food or drink water that is contaminated with these organisms, they may become sick. So we've got two ways so far, person to person, soil, food, and water. Next one, animals. Animals can be carriers of pathogens too. Can you think of some? If an infected animal bites someone, the pathogens can pass to the individual. Mosquitoes and ticks are two very common carriers of pathogens. Also, people can become infected with pathogens by coming in contact with contaminated objects. Ooh, there's another one, contaminated objects. This is how colds and flus are often spread. If an infected person touches something like a drinking glass or a doorknob, the pathogens can be passed to anyone who also uses that object. For this reason, proper hygiene, a clean environment, and hand washing are very helpful in reducing infection and the spread of disease. Okay, so take us back to COVID-19. What are some things we're doing to help prevent the spread of this pathogen? Think of at least 3 things that we're doing to prevent the spread. So, of course, one of the biggest ones, we're doing school at home. We're staying home. We're staying away from people. We're avoiding person to person. That's number 1. Number 2, wearing masks to prevent, and that's really important for people who are sick so that when they don't breathe it out, they don't cough it out, they don't breathe it out, they don't sneeze it out. That's 2. We're cleaning our surfaces a lot. We're washing our hands a lot. Did you think of others? Okay. Now on this page, did you see the picture of the bread? It's gross. Remember our moldy bread? What does this moldy loaf of bread have to do with fighting against infection? I love this question and answer because we think that all these little things are bad, but remember there's good bacteria and bacteria that makes us sick. And right there on that bread, that's actually a fungus, but there's a fungus that becomes one of the very best medicines against some of the bacteria. If you've ever taken anything with penicillin or amoxicillin, that's moldy bread. That's a mold, and it is one of our best antibiotics. And we'll be reading more about those next time. Okay, so let me go down here. We're not done on this one. Here are some pictures. Oh my goodness. Trichophyton rubrum is a type of fungus that causes hair, skin, and nail infections. Sliding over this black guy right here. This parasitic amoeba is a protist. It is a pathogen that results in diarrhea and ulcers. No fun. And last but not least, this section right here, outlook. I love this. Remember how we didn't know about pathogens until the 1800s? Remember how the Bible was written thousands and thousands of years before that? Of course God knew. In His infinite wisdom, God provided practical solutions for the spread of infectious diseases. Well before people knew what caused disease, God gave specific laws in the Old Testament that taught not only obedience, but were also a means of protection. Leviticus includes the first record of quarantine, or the isolation of people with infectious diseases. This effectively contained and prevented the spread of the disease. In Numbers, the priests were instructed to use hyssop soap and water to clean their hands and clothes after touching the blood of sacrificial animals. In Deuteronomy, the Israelites were instructed to keep their waste out of the camp, which reduced waterborne diseases. How marvelous it is to know that God's laws protected people from infections, even when people were unaware of the diseases, because God is all-knowing, and that's why we trust in Him.